Hello and welcome to the Ramblings of a 42-year-old man. Chris Smith here with you today, and we are going to continue our Final Fantasy coverage. We are going to jump into the next mainline game of the series, which is Final Fantasy IX. So this being the last of the PS1 Final Fantasy games, also kind of a throwback to the kind of the earlier games of the series as well. So we'll talk about some development stuff, gameplay, characters, and story, and then we'll finish up with some of the legacy. And that'll get us through Final Fantasy IX, so please stay tuned. All right, so Final Fantasy IX was released in 2000 on the PlayStation 1. It is the last of the Final Fantasy games on PlayStation 1. The Final Fantasy X next mainline entry would be jumping up to the PlayStation 2. So this one was directed by Hiroyuki Ito, who was the co-director of Final Fantasy VI. So this is his kind of first jab at a game all on his own. And music, again, is Nobuo Uematsu. This is actually the last of the Final Fantasy games that is completely scored by him. He will do work on future games, but he will not be the lone music supervisor for the remaining games. He did use some tracks from his original Final Fantasy II games, being that this was kind of a throwback, kind of retrospective game almost a little bit to the origins of the series. So he updated some of his tunes from the first couple of games to put in here to kind of help with some of that nostalgia factor as well. We'll go ahead and jump into the gameplay aspects next. So gameplay-wise, we still have a lot of the same that we've had for quite a while now. We have our world map, active time battles. You have your weapons, your armor. You raise up experience to gain levels. You have hit points and magic points. Differences in this one, we're back to having a 4-person party, which is the first time we've had that since Final Fantasy VI, rather than the 3-person party that we've had in the last 2 entries. Also different, magic and summons are a little bit different. So instead of learning magic spells as you level up or things like that, you'll actually learn skills and your magic and your summons through equipment that you equip. So different weapons or different armor will have different either special tags or magic that you can learn after you've worn it for a certain amount of battles. You're also kind of back to a class system, which is the first time we've seen it's probably since Final Fantasy V. And really, this is more similar to Final Fantasy IV, where all of our main characters had specific classes. We're back to that. Each of our characters has kind of a main class. Again, that throwback to the earlier games of the series. Other differences, in this one you'll see things called active time events, which as you're playing through the game, little blurbs might pop up that if you hit X, you'll actually see little scenes from other characters that you're not playing as at that moment and things that they're doing at that time. So kind of, add some more story, more backstory to a lot of the characters that way. There's another card game, similar to the card game we had in Final Fantasy VIII. This one's called Tetramaster. It is, in my opinion, not as easy to master as the Final Fantasy VIII game, and there really does not seem to be much in the way of rewards for doing so. Where Final Fantasy VIII, you really needed to play the card game if you want to be able to max stats or even just have high functioning magic. Here it's just more, it seems to be more for fun. There's a card tournament that you will have to play eventually in the game, so you will need to learn a little bit, but otherwise I've never touched the game very, very much when it comes to the card game. We're going to go ahead and jump into our character section next. All right, so for our protagonist, we are led by the character of Zidane. He is your standard thief type character. Now he's a lot. You'll see a lot of these characters are very almost cartoon-like in their structure. Like Zidane has a monkey tail, and throughout the game, a lot of the characters, when they're disparaging him, are calling him monkey. Now he's a member of a theater troupe out of the Kingdom of Limblum, and he also is kind of he's orphaned. He doesn't really know where he comes from, and so that will play into some of the story when we get into the story of the game. Then we've got Garnet, or you can eventually at some point name this character Dagger as well. Now she is your white mage slash summoner, and she is the princess of the Kingdom of Alexandria. Kind of quiet but strong, and she's having some issues with the actions of her mother, and so we'll get into a lot of the reasons why she's doing what she's doing throughout the game as we get in there as well. You got the character of Vivi, who is your Black Mage character, and he looks just like the original Black Mage's characters from Final Fantasy I, the big steepled hat and everything. So Also, mysterious background. We really don't know any background about him. We'll get to know more as we play throughout the game. Then we got Steiner, who is a knight for the Kingdom of Alexandria. He's the captain of all the knights, and he's your knight character. He's wearing armor, he's got big old swords, and so he's your standard knight character. You got Freya. She is a Burmesian, which is kind of a different race of characters. All very good with spears. She is your dragoon type character, if you remember that character class from Final Fantasy 3 and 4. Then you got Quina. Quina is like a blue mage. Now, what Quina does is she eats enemies when their hit points are a little bit lower, and that's how she learns enemy skills, which that's kind of what a blue mage does. It's been a while since we had a blue mage, but that's how you learn enemy skills. Iko is another summoner, a young child. She's kind of another white mage summoner. She comes from the village of Maiden Sari. We will see the kind of ties between her and Garnet as you go through the game. And then Amarant is kind of your almost ninja slash monk type character. And he is a bounty hunter that we will run into pretty late in the game. Actually, probably about halfway point in the game, we finally get all of our protagonists together. Then speaking of antagonists, so our main villain through the first half of the game at least is Queen Braun, and she is the Queen of Alexandria. She's Garnet's adopted mother, and yeah, she's who we're kind of going up against for the first half of the game. And then Kuja shows up, and he's really the main antagonist of the game. He becomes the main focus of our protagonist near the later half of the game, and he's working through Braun to kind of disrupt the world and put it into chaos, and we'll find out why he wants to do this as we go through the story mode as well, which we will go ahead and jump into next. All right, so the game starts in the Kingdom of Alexandria. Zidane and his theater troupe have been sent to kidnap the Princess Garnet from Alexandria by orders of the Regent of Limblum, who is Cid, another Cid like you'll see in every Final Fantasy game at this point. Vivi is also attending the show, and then we find out that Garnet is already planning to run away because of the way that her mother is behaving. She's trying to find some answers on what is going on. So it ends up Garnet, Zidane, Vivi, and Steiner. Steiner is trying to stop the kidnapping, but we all end up on the theater ship, which is flying away from Alexandria, gets attacked, and we crash into the evil forest. So the crew ends up working together, trying to get to Limblum, while Zidane is trying to get Garnet to Limblum. Vivi is coming along. Steiner is secretly trying to divert them back to Alexandria so he can, rescue the princess in his mind. So we travel through the evil forest, go through an ice cavern. We end up at a small village of Dali, and we find that Alexandria somehow is manufacturing black mages that look just like Vivi, but they have no souls. They're almost like no personality. They're almost like robots if you think about them. Eventually, we do reach Limblum. We talk to Cid, and he tells us that Alexandria is now invading another kingdom of Burmecia, which is where Freya is from. So Freya is going to join us here. So Zidane, Vivi, and Freya are going to go off to Burmecia to try to see what is going on there with Alexandria's attack. Meanwhile, Garnet and Steiner kind of secretly run off to go to Alexandria because Garnet wants to try to talk to her mother, try to figure out why is she doing these things, see if she can reason with her. So we get to Burmecia with that Zidane team, and we find that the Alexandrian general Beatrix has conquered the kingdom, just wiped out most people. Refugees have run off to a nearby tree that's kind of like a holy tree for Burmecia called Clara. And then we also finally see Kuja for the first time, and we have no idea who he is at this point, but he is obviously working with Queen Braun. He's supplying her with these black mages. We're not quite sure what his end game is at this point, but we will be figuring that out. So meanwhile, Garnet gets to Alexandria, and she's trying to talk to her mother, and she gets imprisoned, knocked out, and her mother uses some sort of ritual to extract summon spells out of Garnet. And she uses the Odin, one of the summon spells she gets out, to destroy Clara, that tree where the Burmesians have gone into hiding, and where we are currently at, trying to figure out if we can help them or not. So we're just barely able to escape by jumping onto an Alexandrian ship. Clara is destroyed. The Odin summon goes, does its job very well. A lot of cool cutscenes in this game. And so we end up in Alexandria again, trying to rescue Garnet, who has again been kind of captured by the queen and had her summon spells taken out of her. Beatrix finds us, but when she realizes what the queen has done with Garnet, she turns on the queen and helps us to escape. And so Steiner, Beatrix, and Freya kind of stay behind to let Zidane and Vivi be able to get Garnet and escape out of Alexandria. So we do so, and we get to Lindblum, but as we get there, the queen uses another summon spell, Atomos, to destroy, well, not completely destroy, but pretty much decimate Lindblum pretty badly. And so we get there, we are able to find Sid, and Sid says that, Kuja's been able to supply Bronn with these black mages somehow from the outer continent, so let's travel over there and see if we can't figure out what's going on with that. So we travel to the outer continent. As we go, we have to kind of go through a marsh, which is where we'll find Quina. So then Quina joins our team at that point to help us go through the marsh into a cave, and we end up on the outer continent. And as we get to the outer continent, we find a black mage village. Now, these black mages seem to have become self-aware. They're understanding, the stuff that they've done now. They've also realized that their lifespans are unfortunately very short, about a year. And so, Vivi is kind of now worrying a little bit if he's just like these guys, if he's going to be dying soon as well. They point us in the direction of the Aoife tree, which is to the north, as a center of where mist comes from, and mist is what is being used to create these black mages. So we travel up that way. We end up, before we get to the Aoife tree, we end up at the village of the Summoners, which is Maiden Sari, and we run into Eiko there. She is very lonely. She's the only human, person there in this town. She's got a whole bunch of Moogle friends, but she's very lonely for real people. So she wants to join us. She helps us go over to the Aoife tree, where we end up defeating a monster at the base of it, the monster that creates mist, which is used to make these black mages. We defeat it, and no more mist can be made, which gets Kuja's attention. And Kuja flies over, and as he's doing so, Queen Bronn also is coming, because she has decided that she does not want to share power with Kuja. She's going to take him out now that she's got these summon spells, and she summons Bahamut to attack Kuja, but Kuja somehow is able to turn it around and take control of Bahamut, and he attacks the queen, and she ends up dying. That gets us to about the halfway point of the game, so we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back with the remainder of the story here. All right, so right around this point in the game too, we also have kind of had a couple run-ins with Amaranth, who was sent by Queen Bronn to try to capture Garnet, and he ends up joining us at one point after a battle with Zidane, where Zidane chooses to not kill him. He chooses to save his, mercy, kind of not take him out after defeat, and he doesn't understand it. So he joins to try to see if he can learn why Zidane is the way he is. So that's how we get our last of our main protagonist characters. So now that we've got that, the queen is unfortunately, or fortunately, if you say, she's been our antagonist the whole time, but she is Garnet's mother, and so it is kind of a sad scene when she passes away. But Garnet is coronated, the queen, coronated, I don't know if that's a word, but anyway, she has a coronation where she becomes the Queen of Alexandria. During this, Kuja attacks the castle. Garnet and Eiko are able to kind of come together to summon this giant summon spell of Alexander. Kuja wants to try to steal Alexander, just like he did with Bahamut from the queen, but somehow an unknown guy comes out. His name is Garland. We don't know who he is, where he's coming from, but he comes and he is able to destroy Alexander before Kuja can take it over. Unfortunately, doing a lot of damage to Alexandria in the process. So the party escapes to Lindblum, where they meet with Sid. He tells them to go to this desert palace on the outer continent, because that is where Kuja, his home base, has been found to be. So we go over there. Unfortunately, we're captured by Kuja, and he blackmails Zidane into having to go recover a stone of some sort that's going to be a secret, a way for him to try to open a portal into this other world called Terra. So we get the stone, we give it to him, save the rest of our crew, and then we end up following Kuja through this portal into Terra. At Terra, we discover a whole race of people that look just like Zidane. So, Zidane has always kind of been wondering where he came from and stuff. Evidently, he came from this other world of Terra. And then we find out that sometime in the past, the people of Terra were dying. And so they all went into hibernation and created Garland to pretty much take care of their souls, merge Terra with Gaia. The plot gets a little complicated here. Merge Terra and Gaia, which is our world, together, and restore Terran souls into dead Gaia, the take kind of fill the souls that are leaving Gaia, fill it up with Terran souls, and then put it in this race of people that he's created, the ones like Zidane and Kuja. Those vessels are going to get filled with these Terran souls, and so he needed a lot of Gaian people to die to open up this room, evidently, for all these Terrans to come in. And so that is why he created Kuja and sent him into the world to sow chaos and destruction. Kuja ends up betraying Garland because he does not want to become a vessel for a Terran soul. He's quite happy the way he is. But a dying Garland tells Kuja that, unfortunately, he is not going to live very long. His lifespan is about similar to how the Black Mage's word is not very long, and he is soon to die. Zidane was created actually to be a replacement eventually for Kuja, a longer living replacement. And Kuja goes nuts. He loses his mind and he destroys Terra. We're just barely able to escape. He obviously escapes. He goes into a kind of a portal underneath the Ifa tree that will lead to the center of creation, and there's a crystal. There's the origin of life crystal, and he wants to destroy it. If he's going to not exist, then he's going to make sure nothing exists. So we have to follow him through this portal, defeating a lot of boss enemies along the way. You'll see a repeat of some of the bosses that we fought back in Final Fantasy 1. You'll have Lich and Merilith and the Kraken and Tiamat. You'll see all these kind of throwbacks to the original game. Eventually we get down there and we fight Kuja. We're able to defeat him, but not before he has kind of summoned a creative, destructive force known as Necron. So we have to fight and defeat Necron as well. We do so, and the Eva's tree begins collapsing on us, and our party is escaping. Zidane hears Kuja's voice somehow, and he says, I gotta stay behind. He is effectively my brother. I need to go, see if I can rescue him. So he goes back into the Ifa tree, finds Kuja, and sort of rescues him. Kuja is dying. His lifespan is ending, so he stays with him as his lifespan ends. And the Ifa tree, unfortunately, collapses on top of them, and Zidane's fate is left unknown. So post-game scene, the theater troupe is back in Alexandria putting on a show for Queen Garnet at this point. We meet a bunch of small Black mages who say that Vivi is their dad. They're the offspring of Vivi. Unfortunately, we don't see Vivi, so it leaves his fate kind of, he has that short lifespan. He may at this point be, unfortunately, he may have stopped living, but he's had offspring. He's continued a line. So, it's supposed to be kind of a hopeful in there. But, we're having this performance in Alexandria. All of our team that kind of helped us along the way are there. And during the performance, all of a sudden, Zidane appears from on the stage, and Garnet runs down to the stage, embraces him, and there's the end of the story of the game. So Final Fantasy IX was released to positive critical reviews. It was definitely praise was centered on the simplification of the game. Is much simpler game than 7 and especially 8 with that crazy junction system. A much more simple story, a little more, I don't want to say fun because all the games are fun, but a little more, a little more zany, a little more cartoony even, maybe this would be a good Final Fantasy game for a younger audience to come into maybe, because 7 and 8 could get very dark sometimes. Nostalgia was cited as a big positive aspect of the game because of course it was trying to bring back, you're fighting for the crystal, and you have each of your character classes. You've got this standard Black Mage, look going on. And there's little callbacks throughout the whole game, little side characters and little side quests that all have to do with things that happen anywhere between Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 3 especially. There's a lot of focus on those original 3. But even 4, 5, and 6 there's callbacks to as well. So this game was remastered in 2016 for mobile phones, Android, iOS. Now that remaster has things like you can speed up the gameplay, you can put no encounters, you can max your levels, you can max your stats, you can learn all of your special skills. So pretty much you can play it as like a speed run, really easy with this remaster. It was re-released, the remaster was re-released on PS4 in 2017. It was also released on the Switch and Xbox One in 2019. So it's pretty much almost on every platform at this point. For me, I like this one quite a bit. This is probably up there in my top 5 of Final Fantasy games. It's just fun. Like I said, it's a little easier than some of the other ones. You don't have to really think about it too hard. You can just enjoy it and have a good time and enjoy the spectacle and the characters. Graphics have enhanced quite a bit on the PlayStation 1 since Final Fantasy 7 days. The characters are much more enjoyable than like Squall might be from Final Fantasy 8. You don't have the depressed character all the time. Zidane is lively and jumpy and full of energy, and some people may be annoyed by that aspect as well, but at least it's different than the kind of stoic, depressed guys we've seen for a couple of games now. So just a fun game, just quite a bit of fun. You can play through this one pretty quick. I mean, we went through the story mode very fast, but there's not a whole slot there. There's some side quests and stuff that you can do, but that was, that story is the majority of what the game is, and so it's just fun and not a huge one. So that's Final Fantasy 9. Next entry is Final Fantasy 10, which is one of my favorites. It was the first Final Fantasy game coming out on PS2. First time we'll have voice acting in the Final Fantasy game. So some positives, some negatives in this first try. Definitely the voice acting will get better as you go along, but Final Fantasy X kind of got that ball rolling. Amazing characters, my favorite love story in the games, any of the Final Fantasy games. And anyway, that one's a lot of fun. I'll have a lot of fun talking about that one. So that'll be our next entry for this Final Fantasy series. That being said, we'll close out our PlayStation 1 era. Which we've had Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. We also had Final Fantasy Tactics in there. It was pretty much, this is the heyday of Final Fantasy. This was the biggest mainstream Final Fantasy would be, these three games. These were like Final Fantasy 7, best-selling Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy 8, second best-selling Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy 9, I think, was the fourth best-selling Final Fantasy game. So, Final Fantasy 10 that we got coming up is going to be the third. So this whole little section of time is kind of the big impact of Final Fantasy in the world. So that being said, we'll reach the end of the PlayStation 1 era. We'll start our PS2 era next week with Final Fantasy 10. So thank you for listening to me ramble on about Final Fantasy 9, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.